Alrighty guys, so in this video we're going to be breaking down the do's and the don'ts of home labbing, as well as basically all the specifics, the limitations, the problems, how much money you're going to save, or are you going to really spend. This is basically a one-all, for-all video to do with home labbing, so then I never have to make a single video again in regards to home labbing at this level. Now granted, if you are interested in home labbing and such, then this is the right video for you. If you're already an experienced home labber, you might learn more about the things I have to say in here inside this video, or something new that you never even knew. So without further ado, let's get into it. By the way, if one of you guys are really good at, for example, time stamping things, it probably would be the video to do this in case this video ever blows up, although I doubt it. Let's start off with the very first one when you're starting to Google, the problem with self-hosting. Right off the bat, the very first problem that's shown here is, for example, that self-hosters usually run into a critical limitation after 6 months. Yes and no. For example, the very first one that comes up is your internet speed. Most people in the US, God, my eye itches. Most people in the US are stacked or capped at 50 megabits per second. Yes, that does suck, but for example, I'm at 85 megabits per second where I'm at in Europe, and I've had no issues for the past 6-7 months for what I do. And that's, for example, having streams, that's, for example, having music, audiobooks. I even do a little bit of game self-hosting. It's never been an issue for me. Now, when it comes to streaming videos, if you download a video and it's inside your home network, for example, then it's not going to have any issues whatsoever because it's inside your home network, okay? It's not the speed of your ISP, which is why reading this article, for example, from their own Nextcloud smoothly confuses the hell out of me, because internally it doesn't matter. What matters is in the processing between each other. So, for example, you can have the outside speed that you're being charged for essentially being ridiculous, okay? It can be, for example, even 10 megabits per second, but the moment you download something, it doesn't matter, okay? So don't be turned off by your internet speed. You do a lot of crazy cool things, regardless if you have a slow internet speed or not. Granted, you don't live in a place like, I don't know, Egypt, that has barely 500 kilobytes a second of download speed, because I've been to Egypt and I know how slow your internet is. But for the most part, if you wait a day, then you'll have something. And I doubt you can even stream with that speed. Anyways, let's talk though. So power outages, hardware issues, things of that nature. It used to be that if you had a power outage with your server or something else, you're basically fried. You're doomed, you're out of luck. But nowadays, with having a lot of virtual machines, a lot of servers aren't essentially just a dedicated operating system, if you will, or hard... what's proper terminology? Basically, it's a hard OS. That's all it is. Nevertheless, though, it's not like that anymore. You have VMware, where basically you have virtual machines on your server. So you put a USB into your server, essentially, that acts as the host operating system, and then all your drives are basically the virtual machine data. Now, with virtual machines, you can do what's called snapshotting. So you can save, or rather back up, your data, if you will, the entire time. Have a power outage, or let's say you have a power outage that's coming in soon, that's going to happen. All you have to do is snapshot your stuff, and then you can say, for example, turn off your server. Now, for example, the difference between servers and desktops, and very briefly, if you snapshot, you can just restore right back to where you were. That's what a snapshot does, just so you know. If you were to, for example, do the difference between a laptop and a server, the only difference is the amount of CPU, the amount of memory, and the amount of space that it has. Some would even argue the amount of internet connection speed that can actually go into it because of the motherboard. But realistically, it's just about the resources. There's no difference otherwise. It can run the exact same operating system and everything else. So if you're starting out small, it's not an issue. That's why people self-host all the time with Raspberry Pis, even though they have almost no data on them. It's because they can still be self-hosted with it. So if you have a old laptop, for example, that you want to stream shows from and such, that's not a problem. But let's get further and further deeper into this, okay? So don't worry about hardware failures. I, for example, have never had a hard drive fail on me once. Probably soon, probably gonna happen, but I've never had it fail on me once since I've been like 4 years old, okay? It's just never happened. I've had other things fail on me, but not that. Now, the security risks multiply with every open port. That's true, 100%. That's why you don't open up ports. Now, if you don't open up ports, You don't have security issues because everything's internal. Now, let's say you want to self-host a video game or something else of that nature, say a Minecraft server. There's other ways to do it without opening up a port, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, the maintenance is endless. This is kind of true, but it's kind of not at the same time. Usually with servers, once you have something installed, you don't really have to look at it ever again. Now, before you get in the comment section and say, that's not true, I have to put in updates and such of that nature, when I update it, things break. Well, if, for example, that said virtual machine is not accessing the internet, does the software really ever have to be updated that's on the machine if it's never accessing said internet and has no internet access? It doesn't really matter. Now, the operating system as well, at that case in point, it also doesn't really matter. As long as you, for example, pull it away from the internet and it doesn't get access, it doesn't matter. So, for example, photos, things of that nature. But let's say, for example, you are, in 9 out of 10 cases, it will be somehow connected to the internet. Then yes, you will have to update your operating system. You will have to make sure that things are actually still running smoothly. But otherwise, it's really not a problem. Usually Linux updates are insert one command here, or you can just cron job it, so then next thing you know, it just does it automatically. And then voila, you don't have to worry about it anymore. It just does it. And usually things don't break. On the off chance that it does break, we live in 2026. You can just ask an AI that you have on your machine, or download it rather, and say, hey, this broke, how do I fix it? Or can you fix it for me? And chances are it's probably going to fix it for you if you actually trust that AI, if you don't want to do it yourself. But nevertheless, it's very simple in that respect, or easier. Now, legal and privacy risk issues, this is where it tries to scare everyone, and they try to say, oh, you know, hosting data at home exposes you to legal gray zones. And then if you continue reading, in Germany, 11% of home self-hosters received ISP warnings about DMCA or GDPR compliance, sharing media or running public-facing services. Hello! Sharing media or running public-facing services. You're accountable if a breach happens. ISPs can throttle or terminate server-like behavior. You don't have to worry about this if it's all internal. 90% of you guys, or 95, I'll even say 98% of you, are not planning to self-host and have all of your TV shows that you're watching, all your movies, all your baby picture photos being accessible by going to a link that John Doe can access. You're having it within your network, you're having it on your computer, you're having it, for example, being able to modify and touch your lights on your house. You don't have to worry about that. Now, scaling between 3 to 5 users is hard and expensive. It's not expensive, and it's literally saying it's not designed for scale. That's just a load of bull. So, for example, if you start out with heavier technology, it's not a problem. Take for example this. You love images, right? I'm sure you do. You have almost a terabyte space. Nowadays, it really sucks to get a hard drive. It sucks to have RAM. I'm not denying you that. However, if you start out with something bulky already right off the bat, then you don't have to worry about it. Now, with the server specifically, for example, I have 3, 6, 8 of my hard drive slots being taken over. I still have 1, 2, 3. I still have 4 hard drive slots that I can just plug and play a hard drive if I need to, and now I have extra space. You don't have to have everything right off the bat all ready to go. It's not hard. It's not expensive. The expensive side is more so when you're scaling into like the, I want to argue, 30, 50, 70, 90 range. Then it starts per se start getting semi-expensive because of the RAM prices and the hardware pricing. But realistically, it doesn't all at the same time. Because, for example, if you are self-hosting your cloud, as ridiculous as this is to say, you just tell your family members, hey, I know you're using Google, I know you're using this. Let's say, for example, in a perfect world, you're hosting your very own Netflix-like setup. You're hosting your own cloud setup. Now, a Netflix setup, for example, say the family and things of that nature, for even just having 2 streams at once is $16.99. For premium, it's $21.99 a month. That's just for Netflix alone. That's not talking about your cloud your cloud stuff or anything else. Why can't you then go to said member and be like, hey, I have all this set up. You know, what if instead of paying Google and everything else, you just pay me $20? You know, I'm a family member. Let me do that. Then you go to next family member, next family member, next family member. Instead of, at the end of the day, that being $100 towards whatever corporate on all the different family groups, now it's saying to you, that's $100 a month in your pocket, home labbing, and you actually being able to put that money towards being able to upgrade your infrastructure. Even if you make it $10 at the end of the day per individual family group, that's still a lot that then you can push towards upgrading your services/servers, and then that money isn't going into the air, if you will. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just how expensive you make it. Now, let's go even further beyond this, right? Let's go into the next one, why you should or shouldn't self-host. Cloud isn't bad, self-hosting isn't better. Cloud is bad. And the reason why cloud is bad is because all of your data, like I mentioned previously, is being hosted on Google, being hosted on Apple servers, being hosted wherever you have located. And at any point in time, and you can Google this, or Bing this, or whatever at any point in time, if those said services don't like what you have, they'll delete your account. Now, let me ask you this. If Google today deleted your account, what would you lose? Your Google Maps data information on all your saved locations, your Google contacts, or whatever is actually synced. Seriously, look at what actual contacts you have if you have an Android that are actually on your phone and not just synced because of your Google account. Your entire drive is gone. Your entire searches are gone. Practically, your entire YouTube feeds are gone. Everything that you had, essentially, your Google Docs, Excel, everything else is gone. What about your Microsoft? Well, same thing goes for that, but it gets worse. Because what if, for example, you've been signing into websites the entire time with your Google? Well, now every single one of those websites are now locked out for you as well. So now you don't even have access to those websites either. Let's say you're logging into your Discord with your Google account. Let's say you're logging into, for example, I don't know, Facebook with your Google account, whatever else. Now all that's locked away and you can't get access to it anymore because your Google got removed. That's basically the problem that we're running into. The other problem is, let's say, for example, there's a bad actor that wants to look after you. If they go through legal means, they can be like, hey, Google, I want to know X, Y, and Z information, which has happened before. And then next thing you know, Google gives them whatever they requested it. There was a legal situation with Wrecked Ben or something else of that nature to do with Legos, and the opposing party requested Google to give him all the information, and so he got, for example, all of the guy Wreckful. I really can't think of his name. He got all of their information, their search history on Google, what they were searching before, everything that he was interested in. So keep that in mind when, for example, you're actually self-hosting versus using on cloud, because not only that, but nowadays with AI, Google and everything else is just training their AI models off of you, so much so that it's been proven that they're scanning all of your personal and public photos, whether you like it or not. And let's be honest here, Meta's been doing it for quite a while with your posts. Now, of course, there is upsides, like I mentioned before, the downsides of self-hosting, mistakes, and the freedom aspect. Now, when you're self-hosting as well, something to keep in mind is it depends on what you want to self-host and what you want to pull away from. For me personally, it's about freedom and privacy. So I don't want to have Google 24/7 knowing my location. I don't want to have, I don't, for example, want to be using Google Maps. I don't, for example, want to have my data on a cloud. I want to be able to hold it myself. I don't want to have, for example, my music constantly being seen as to what I'm listening to and things of that nature. So it depends on what you want to self-host and how you're going to scale it. My particular case, I'm like, I want to self-host everything. So that's what I've done. For you, though, you need to figure out why you're doing this, because it is going to be time heavy, but by the time that you finish this, you're going to know a lot more about computers and IT than the vast majority of people actually using the internet do. I would even argue roughly 95% more. Self-hosting is like the equivalent of using a computer back in the day. No one understood how the hell it worked, but they were all interested in it the moment you start showing them it, and you were always that weird, strange person. That's what self-hosting is nowadays. The IT nerds have been using it since forever and / doing it forever, but for normal folk like us, say the 20s, 30s, heck, maybe even your 40s, it's not really something that we thought about until pricing started getting ridiculous. So the next question is, how expensive is actually self-hosting the cloud, for example? So you can host your Nextcloud for entirely free. You can host your Jellyfin for entirely free, and the majority of the reason why is because a lot of this is open source, so you can even see the source code and things that are running on it. So you don't have to worry, for example, about the private eye staring into all of your business. Now, take for example this. These are some of the things that you can do with your self-host. I'm just going to show you. On my own, not Netflix, but Jellyfin rather, I'm able to watch anime. I'm able to watch TV shows on what I do and don't want. I'm able to actually see the things I want, and to the point where it's essentially kind of like, for example, having my own Netflix. And I even have custom configuration to being able to actually stream it. Which reminds me, we talked about this recently within my Discord. So if you want to join our Discord and talk about home labbing and research, check out in the link below, because this server... I'm sorry. This video is not advertised by any means, has any advertisers, it's just me. Anyways though, so you have for example this, and it looks just like, and I won't get further into this, but it looks just like you would with a Netflix. Now, there are a bunch of ways, a different theme, and you can make it however you want. But I can place this on a television and have no issues whatsoever. The next thing, for example, is other than TV shows and movies, I have, for example, my own self-built media player. So much so that I don't have to worry about Spotify and things of that nature now. Now I just play my own music. I can enjoy myself and not have to worry about it. I can have a discovery, things of that nature, and whatever I do or don't want, albums, tracks, you name it, and I don't have to have all that data being sent out either. And look, I even get lyrics, anything of that nature. And then finally, I have my audiobooks, where I can actually enjoy my own personal audiobooks, listen to them, things of that nature, learn from them as well. And then I can also search for them. This is by going through things such as LiDAR, radar, Prowler, all the R's essentially. It's called the R setup or double R setup. And you can set this all up on your own to being able to just self-host all of it. Now, how much space does this take up? How much is this going to use? Realistically, as of right now, I think 30 gigabytes, 40 gigabytes. Now, that's not, of course, talking about the show size that it takes up, because every show is anywhere between, say, like half a gigabyte to a gigabyte. But if you learn how to do streaming and stuff like that, like I talk about in the side of our Discord, then you don't even have to worry about the size of shows and movies anymore for your own home lab setup. Now, in addition to this as well, other than that, you also have other means of self-hosting. For example, like I want to show you, you can set up your own Nextcloud. Nextcloud is basically your own cloud service. So then you can basically just enjoy having a cloud on your own machine. And it scales literally based off of how much other storage you have. Now, you also, for example, may have the worry of, well, how do I know, for example, that ISP isn't listening to me the entire time on what I'm doing? Because I'm kind of concerned that they are going to listen to every little bit that I do or don't because of how it's connected. And that's one of the concerns that are also listed inside here. Well, you don't have to worry about it, because this is how it works. You literally have your standard stream on, say, your other computers with a big bad ISP. And then you have your own VPN connection, essentially, from the said machine that then has that sort of traffic encrypted. So now you never have to worry about the ISP, for example, ratting you out and being like, hey, you have this sort of content. You're not allowed to have this sort of content. We don't want you to have this sort of content, because now you have it encrypted. And that sort of pricing is also there as well. For example, AirVPN. For a single month, €7. If you want to go down the Proton way, it's $3 a month if you grab it for 2 years. If you wanted to do 2 years in total, which the equivalent is €3.29, that's right here, or even better, for 3 years, €2.75. It all depends, though, how you want to do things and how you want to set it up. And that's the biggest problem. If I go to, for example, my own home page, you're going to need something like this. So here, for example, you see my trash and the plastic and stuff like that. But for example, you can be able to set up your Nextcloud to be able to connect to a calendar. This is my Nextcloud. These are my stacks, for example, when you're using Portainers. Because what you can do, the best setup that I'll tell you right here is if I go into Paint, this is the best personal setup I've noticed. You have your server, right? This is your actual physical server. Then you have your operating system, obviously, that basically takes up the entire server, or kind of, depending on how you do it. But then you have your operating system. Then, for example, you have your virtual machines. And each virtual machine has a certain box. Depending on the size, some might be bigger, some might be smaller, right? We don't know exactly what you want to do and things of that nature. But now within a virtual machine as well, what you can do is then have a Docker. Now this Docker allows you to also have another container within the said virtual machine, and within the Docker you can also have a stack. Now the stack has a bunch of different Docker containers, and within that stack you can have what I said before, a container. So what you can do essentially is then have multiple containers all within the said stack to be able to organize the stack. And then, for example, then that's within the Docker and everything else. So you literally compartmentalize as far down, drilling down as far down as you can. And now you don't have to worry about it. Now it's a small singular program. Whereas, for example, if you had an operating system, right, you have your machine and you have the operating system, and then you install a program. Now the program, for whatever reason, has access to the entirety of the system. If you do it this method, as you can see, it's way more compartmentalized, way more secure. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's much cleaner. And this is the right way I've noticed in terms of doing things. This is how I've managed my Nextcloud. This is how I've managed doing all of my different stuff, literally from top down, you name it. This is how I do it. Now, the hard part that most people don't inevitably talk about is the wiring. The wiring becomes a living nightmare because once you actually care about doing things security wise, or say you want to actually branch out and give it to your family members, the question is how. If you self-host everything, you had it set up for self-hosting, how do you then give it to your friends and family members? Well, you do a variety of different ways, but one of the ways that you can do it is, for example, using something called WireGuard or Tailscale. Now, what WireGuard or Tailscale does is it allows you essentially to be able to cut a hole into the internet, rather, or your network, essentially, and be able to connect to it directly. So you can be all the way out in the desert, for example, and be connected to your network all the way from abroad without it being possible to connect locally. The reason is because it uses cryptography, and so it connects by means of that. You do it with OpenVPN, OpenSSL. It's very similar. I'll rephrase and say that not with OpenVPN. That's something that's similar, but nevertheless, I'm getting ahead of myself. You do it through means of this. Or what you could also do is there's a bunch of interesting other means where, for example, you have Cloudflare, which allows you to being able to not open up a port, but be able to open it all at the same time. Things of that nature as well. Now, realistically, when it comes to the hardware things, sometimes if you want to do it on a network level of allowing them to have access to everything, then you're, for example, going to need to be able to get an actual router that then allows it. Or if you want to be able to switch and have virtual LANs, so, for example, whatever is open is separate from the rest of your network, privacy in that respect, then you need to be able to have a router, for example, that can do something like this. You can also do it virtually, but it's proven to be more difficult. It's actually more of a firewall rather than a router, but usually the firewalls are built into the router, which then becomes the headache. Nevertheless, though, that's essentially how you do it. And this is the rabbit hole, because you can also then go down and get a firewall that's virtual rather than a hardware-based firewall, but then you also have to figure out how to make that siphon or have all your traffic go through that firewall. I almost called it a hard fire. That is more or less, though, how you do home labbing from start to finish. And you just start somewhere. Now, the final thing that I will say in terms of everything else I've said, and I apologize for all the ums, the buts, and all the problematic pausing and getting some terms wrong. It's because I don't like editing my videos. I just like doing videos like these, so you know I'm not trying to BS you. Is At the end of the day, you can even self-host on your computer. Back in the day, in the early times, everything was technically self-hosted on your computer, right? You'd play a video game, that video game was on your machine. You didn't have to go to Steam, you didn't have to go to battle.net, you didn't have to go to anything like that. You'd literally get a disc, you plug it into your machine, now you have that game / program. Nowadays, that's not the case. Windows 11 is moving to where everything is basically on the cloud. Your documents, whether you like it or not, are automatically backed up to the cloud. Your, say, for example, video games are locked behind whatever service. So the moment that they don't like you anymore, they can just lock you out of your video games and say that you don't own them anymore. Everything is basically hard locked behind whatever company it is. So you don't really own your stuff anymore. People now, back in the day, used to actually use Windows Media Player and actually play their own music. Nowadays, we use things like Spotify, and we don't even think about where all of our streaming / listening data is actually going to. We're essentially connecting to a lot of these different apps and programs and saying, hey, I like your service, so therefore I'm just going to give you money because it's easier. Realistically, nowadays in 2026, it's starting to become even easier to just very simply self-host things. And if you think about it in the long run, once you have everything on your own home server that you want, you don't have to keep paying for it anymore. Once you have, for example, your own cloud, you don't have to keep paying for the subscription anymore. The $400 for a hard drive, it's $400. Now it's over. Say it's $400 for 4 terabytes. God, I wish nowadays. But say it's for 2 terabytes for $400. You don't have to keep paying for it year after year. You know, our average lifespan nowadays has increased to what, 70, 80 years old? Say now you're in your mid-20s figuring this out. You still have 60 more years to go. Are you really going to pay these companies what feels like or might be going onward 60 plus years for this sort of technology? Or are you going to save the money in the long run, like the real long run, and invest into other means? So that's my take on it. I know it's pretty dramatic and complex, and this is already going onwards for close to a 30-minute video, but I feel like it's necessary. We are losing a lot of our freedoms day by day. We're being told what we can and can't watch. It's starting to get to the point where we don't even know control-wise what we do or don't have, and we're just allowing things into our house without even realizing it. I mean, Google is constantly listening to you. You have a Siri or Cortana and Alexa, insert whatever name here, constantly listening to your information. If you just self-host it, though, all that privacy is now essentially yours. And it's not even so much as worrying about, for example, the companies having their data. You might be able to trust the company, but what happens when a data leak, which seems to be constantly happening, leaks all your data and all the information you have, and then it's sold, say, on the dark web, market, whatever else, and then someone comes after you? How else do you think that you get your email leaked, and next thing you know, you have all these spam emails? Because your data is being sold, because they're able to then grab it and then give it to marketers. Then they're able to determine whether or not that you're able to be scammed or things of that nature. So something else that's really cool, by the way, is that if you have everything self-hosted, you don't ever really have to worry about scams because you know it's all internal on your network. Nevertheless, though, that's me, Matthew Napier. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like, maybe a subscribe. Trying to hit 500. Sorry for the long form. Otherwise, though, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Thanks.